This is At-Risk Learning and Standards-Based Grading. My name is Jake Munson, and I'm the Success Coordinator at Solon High School. One of the questions I often get is, what exactly is a Success Coordinator? And the way I like to describe it is using this analogy here with this picture on the screen. And in this analogy, I'm the gentleman standing on the right, and my job is to make sure the Solon students at Solon High School are successful with the challenge of high school. And this climbing wall in the background represents the challenge of high school. So for some kids, this challenge is not that difficult for them. They're able to climb the wall on their own, scamper right over. And for those students, my role is more of a cheerleader or and can assist in any way possible, but they don't necessarily need much of my assistance. For a good majority of our kids, they're able to climb this wall somewhat on their own, but I can help them as far as strategies and techniques to maybe make their climb a little bit easier. And then we do have a portion of our population where I feel like I'm literally pushing them over the wall. And those are the students we're going to be talking about today when we're talking about at-risk learners. So no matter what factors contribute to a student being labeled as an at-risk student, whether it be learning disabilities, a rough home life, social behavioral struggles, or attendance issues, all at-risk students typically have one thing in common, and that is that they struggle to succeed in school. It's been my experience that standards-based grading can help students who struggle in school find success through several key aspects. Those aspects include reassessment opportunities, flexible deadlines, building of stronger relationships between the student and the teacher, less focus spent on the game of school and more focus on show me what you know and how you've learned, and more opportunities to find success. Of these five, the two that I feel are most valuable to students are first, reassessment opportunities. For whatever reason, and some of which are self-induced, students that are at risk aren't always prepared for assessments at the same time as their peers. And sometimes these students might be a day or two behind, sometimes they might be a week or two behind, or even or two behind. But the nice thing about reassessment opportunities is we're giving those kids opportunities to demonstrate their learning. So, for example, if it's week 3 of a course and the at-risk students should know concept A, but they don't know it at week 3. So week 4 they move on and it's concept B. And halfway through week 4 they're able to finally figure out concept A, even though most of the class is working on concept B. With a reassessment opportunity, even though it's week 4 and they didn't do well on their first assessment of concept A during week 3, week 4 they could go back and they could take a reassessment over concept A and demonstrate their learning. And that's a great way for some of our at-risk students to improve their grades. The other thing that I think is really valuable to at-risk students are flexible deadlines. And the reason I think this is valuable is it allows at-risk students to avoid what I would call death by deduction. And what death by deduction is let's say a teacher assigns a paper and the paper deadline comes and the at-risk student hasn't turned in the paper for whatever reason they don't have it complete. Some teachers will enact a policy where they take a percentage off per day that it's late. It might be 5% or it might be 10%. Let's say a teacher takes 10% a day. So 5 or 6 days later, while the student is still supposedly working on their paper, their grade has now dropped 50 to 60%. And for an at-risk student who maybe hasn't even started their paper yet, might say, well, you know, I was going to write a great paper. I had a great one in mind. I knew exactly what I was going to do, but why would I do it now? I've already lost 60%. I can't do it. I'm not going to do it for an F, so I'm just not going to do it. And in a student's mind, they can even switch that to say, well, this isn't my fault. It's the teacher's fault. They're the ones taking the points away from me. So they can shift that blame or shift that monkey to the teacher versus owning some of that ownership. Whereas with standards-based grading, you can say, okay, I know your paper's late, and there might be some consequences involved with that as far as you may not get, we may not be able to go over your rough draft the same way that we were with other students. You might not get a peer review the same way if peers went over the other drafts, but you can still turn in your paper and you can still be assessed on it. And that takes away some of that death by deduction that's common among at-risk students. So at Solon, we're doing several different things to try to help at-risk students succeed here. One of the first things we do is we built a guided study course and curriculum. And what our guided study course and curriculum looks like is that we have students that have to be identified to be in there. It's not one of our courses that kids can register for on their own. They need to be recommended either by myself, a guidance counselor, administrator, or possibly a teacher. We try to keep these class sizes small, typically 3 to 8 students at a time, and these are 50-minute classes per day. Now, I teach 4 different sessions of this, so 2 per each block. These classes are approximately 20 minutes spent on skill building and then 30 minutes spent in like what would be a structured study hall where they can work on their classwork and assignments from all their other classes. During the 20 minutes spent on skill building, we focus on a different aspect each quarter, but some of our curriculum topics include study skills, test taking strategies, emotional intelligence building, financial literacy, communication skills, employability skills, interpersonal relationship building, and higher order thinking and problem solving. One of the things that I found has been really helpful with this course is that I have several volunteer students, typically upperclassmen in good academic standing, that help TA or be a teacher's assistant or volunteer with this course for community service hours. And they help guide the students with that 30 minutes spent on their classwork. And that's been really beneficial from the standpoint of if I have a student working on geometry, it's been like 17 years since I've been a geometry student. And when I was a geometry student, I think I got it like a C plus. So I'm not necessarily the best person curriculum wise to help with geometry. Whereas if I have a senior student that's in there, this is a student who probably took geometry sometime in the last 3 years, likely from the same teacher that the student is learning from right now, and did fairly well in that course. So that's somebody who can help that student just as much or more than I could. For our guided study curriculum, all those classes are set up as a pass-fail credit for the course. They don't impact the student's grade point average. Another thing we noticed about some of our at-risk students at Solon is that they typically are not going to be working on any schoolwork outside of the school day or the school setting. So they may in class they might be if they get 10 extra minutes in geometry, they may spend that 10 minutes working on their assignment. They might get to problem number 9. They may even take their bag home and with the intention of doing stuff. But what we found is that when they come back to school the next day, they're still on number 9. They haven't progressed anymore in their work outside of school. And I found that there's a lot of students, not only at-risk students, but just general students that have that same tendency. And so one of the things that we've done is we said, okay, if you're not going to be able or not going to be willing to work outside of the school hours on your stuff, what we can do is we need you to stay here a little bit longer or come in earlier so that you have a designated time to work on that. So that's where our before and after school study sessions come in. And so typically I'm hosting 4 55-minute study sessions a week in the library for students that need to come in and have some assistance. There's 2 before school on Tuesday and Thursday and 2 after school on Mondays and Wednesdays. Our level of assistance will vary from student to student. Some students that come in just need the time to complete assignments. It's just an independent work time. Others do need some guidance or some structure to help make sure they're getting their stuff done. I've been in frequent contact with parents of at-risk students to make sure that they're coming into these study sessions. And at this point, it's been kind of nice. Some of the students have started to take the self-initiative to say, hey, I just know I need to come in and stay. And so that they've been staying on their own. One of the things that with this that's really important is that it's a really laid back atmosphere. We don't want it to be associated or have the feel of like a detention. That's not our goal. So it's always laid back. Students typically will have their cell phones with them if they want to send a quick text or Snapchat. That's okay. It's outside of the school setting. And we always provide snacks, usually M&Ms, Little Debbie, something completely unhealthy that the kids will like. And through 3 quarters this year, we've had over 400 students attend these sessions, and it's really helped our classes. One of our new initiatives this year is called Structured Seminar, and this has been really a successful thing in our building, and we feel like it's really helping our students. And it's based off our response to intervention framework or RTI work. And we can talk a little bit more about how this works in the Q&A session, but I wanted to just kind of give an example of how this and some framework on how this works. So during the middle of our school day, our students have a 30-minute homeroom period called seminar that's opposite of their lunch. So half of our students have lunch and then seminar, and the other half have seminar and then lunch. But either way, they have lunch and a 30-minute homeroom period. This is a time that's designed for students to work on assignments, study for tests, or maybe take some reassessments if they need to. Some of our students do take advantage of this time, but we also have a percentage of students, including a lot of our at-risk kids, that view this simply as a social opportunity to hang out in their homeroom setting and socialize with their peers. Some students can afford this because they're going to be making up that half hour worth of time either before school or after school, or in the evening. They can afford to do that. Our at-risk students typically are not making up that time, so that's a half hour that they're losing out of the day. So through the use of a program called FlexiSched and Google Docs, we created a system where teachers request students to work with during seminar. So the way this would work is, let's say I'm an earth and environmental sciences teacher, and I have a student who is not doing well in my class and needs to come in and get maybe some additional learning, or maybe needs to reassess a learning target that they didn't do well on. But for whatever reason, this student isn't taking the self-initiative to do that. Through the use of this FlexiSched program, I can request this student to come in during their seminar time. This might be 1 day a week. It might end up being up to 4 days a week, depending on the student's availability within their schedule and the number of teachers making requests. So the way this works is that teachers will make requests by 8 a.m. on Monday. Our RTI team will create the schedules for the students on Monday morning, typically during second block, and then students are given a hard copy of their seminar schedule Mondays during their home seminar. And on Mondays, students aren't allowed to leave their home seminar. They have to stay in their home seminar on Mondays. And the schedule will outline their seminar schedule for the rest of the week. Then during Tuesday through Friday, during the seminar time, the building principal and I will track students via a Google Doc to ensure that they're reporting to their assigned structured seminar on a daily basis. And so the way this works is we actually have the Google Doc out and open on our laptops. We'll walk around and we'll mark the kids from classroom to classroom to make sure they're there. And if they're not there, we'll hunt them down and find out where they are and make sure they get to where they need to go. In our third quarter, we've had 320 requests to work with students during structured seminar. That's how many requests were made by our staff. We feel like it's been a highly successful initiative in our building, and it's really helped our academics and our grades. And the barometer I would use to measure that is that we have a weekly D and F list of all the students that are either getting a D or an F. And since we have started doing our structured seminar, our D and F list has dropped 33% since the beginning of the second quarter when we started this. This is just an example of what our Google Doc would look like on a structured seminar. So the top headers include student name, the teacher who requested the student's home seminar, and the notes, if there's any note about that student. You can see right below there, this is Seminar B, which means it's the second half. These students have already eaten lunch and now they're going to their seminar. We use a color coding system for this. So you can see student A, and B and D, E, F. These are students that are in green. This means that they showed up and are doing what they need to be doing. If a student is highlighted in blue, that means that they were absent from school that day for whatever reason. And if a student is in red, that means that they're missing, but they should be there. So that would be somebody that we would be looking for. We put the teacher that the classroom they should be in, as well as their home seminar, because that's likely, if they're not where they need to be, they're probably still in their home seminar. That gives us a good idea of where to start looking for the student. And then you can see where we have some notes if a student's arriving late, or other things just to help us communicate through this doc. We do have a system, if you look at student F and student M, which are crossed off. Teachers are able to cross off a student if the student was able to finish the work or the expectations necessary prior to that session. And they just put the strike through the line. We still mark them green to show that they are accounted for. At this point, we'll open it up for any questions about the session. Thank you.